Welcome to Warfare Codex. If you enjoy fascinating and unusual history, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories. Now, let's dive into the strange and extraordinary world of history's most unique individuals. The morning of December 7th, 1941, shattered the illusion of peace in the Pacific. As dawn broke over the Hawaiian Islands, the skies above Pearl Harbor roared with the engines of Japanese warplanes. Dive bombers screamed downward. Torpedoes sliced through the harbor's waters. In under 2 hours, the United States Pacific Fleet lay in ruins. Battleships burned. Sailors died by the hundreds. The ocean was stained with fire and oil. But this was not a single act of war. It was the opening strike in a vast campaign, a storm sweeping across the Pacific. Even as Pearl Harbor smoldered, Japan launched simultaneous assaults across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Guam, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Malaya, and the Dutch East Indies all came under attack. Japan moved like a tidal wave, fast, violent, and seemingly unstoppable. By early 1942, Tokyo ruled a new empire. From Burma to New Guinea, from the coasts of China to the islands of Micronesia, the Japanese flag flew high. Fortress Singapore, long considered the British Empire's crown jewel in Asia, fell within days. In the Philippines, American and Filipino troops fought desperately, only to be overwhelmed. Those captured were forced onto the infamous Bataan Death March, where thousands died from exhaustion, starvation, and brutality. To the world, Japan looked invincible. But even in those dark early months, cracks began to show. In April 1942, a small group of American bombers, led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, took off from an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. Their mission was impossible: strike Tokyo itself. The Doolittle raid caused little physical damage, but it shook the Japanese command to its core. For the first time, the homeland had been touched. The psychological blow was deep. Then came the Battle of the Coral Sea in May, a battle unlike any before it. Carriers clashed without ever seeing each other. Aircraft became the new kings of naval warfare. Though technically a draw, Coral Sea was the first time Japanese expansion had been stopped. And then, in June 1942, came the moment that changed the war forever: Midway. Thanks to American codebreakers, Admiral Chester Nimitz knew Japan's plan before it began. When the Japanese fleet arrived near Midway Atoll, the U.S. Navy was waiting. In a matter of hours, 4 of Japan's frontline aircraft carriers, the same ones that had struck Pearl Harbor, were sunk. Thousands of Japanese sailors and airmen were lost. The tide had turned. But Midway was not the end. It was only the beginning of a long, brutal counterattack. The Japanese still held vast territories, fortified and defended with everything they had. The United States now faced a new war, a war of attrition, of island hopping, of battles fought in jungles, reefs, and beaches soaked in blood. As 1942 drew to a close, one island would become the crucible of this new kind of warfare. Its name was Guadalcanal, and the fight for it would redefine the Pacific War. Guadalcanal. To most of the world, it was just another dot on the map, a humid, thickly forested island in the Solomon Chain. But in August 1942, it became the center of the Pacific War. For 6 brutal months, American and Japanese forces clashed in the jungle, on the beaches, and in the waters offshore. Men fought not only each other, but disease, exhaustion, and starvation. The nights echoed with gunfire and screams. By the end, Japan had lost the island, and something far more valuable, the strategic initiative. From Guadalcanal forward, Japan would never again dictate the tempo of the war. The Allies, primarily the United States, began a relentless campaign of island hopping. The goal was simple but punishing: bypass heavily fortified Japanese strongholds, seize key islands, and move steadily toward Japan itself. Every island was a fortress. Every beach landing was a gamble with death. In 1943, American forces pushed through the Solomon Islands and New Guinea. Then came the Central Pacific Offensive: Tarawa, Kwajalein, Saipan, Tinian, Peleliu. Each name marked by ferocious resistance, dug-in defenders, and staggering casualties. On Saipan, Japanese civilians, terrified by propaganda, leapt to their deaths rather than surrender. On Peleliu, the battle raged for over 2 months, costing thousands of lives for an island barely 6 miles long. As U.S. forces advanced, the skies became their domain. American industrial power overwhelmed Japan's once dominant air forces. The Mariana Islands became a forward base for a new kind of warfare, one that brought destruction from the skies. In March 1945, American B-29 bombers unleashed firebombing raids on Japanese cities. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash. Tokyo burned. Tens of thousands died in a single night. The line between soldier and civilian blurred in the flames. At sea, the United States had gained complete dominance. The once mighty Imperial Japanese Navy, broken at Midway and bled dry in later engagements, could no longer stop the American advance. Japan's famed aircraft carriers had been replaced by suicide pilots, kamikaze attacks that crashed into American ships with terrifying force. Some were successful, many were not. But all spoke to a desperate reality: Japan was losing. Then came Iwo Jima. A volcanic island just 750 miles from Tokyo, Iwo Jima was small, but vital. The battle lasted over a month. Japanese defenders, hidden in tunnels and bunkers, fought to the last man. Nearly 7,000 Americans died taking the island. Nearly all of the 21,000 Japanese defenders were killed. And yet, the worst was still to come. In April 1945, U.S. forces landed on Okinawa, the last major stepping stone before the Japanese mainland. What followed was the bloodiest battle of the Pacific War. Rain turned the ground to mud. Artillery turned it to pulp. Over 12,000 Americans were killed. Over 100,000 Japanese soldiers and civilians died. It was a glimpse of what an invasion of Japan might look like, and it terrified American planners. The Japanese refused to surrender. Their military culture glorified death over defeat. Their cities prepared for invasion. Civilians trained with bamboo spears. The home islands had become a fortress of desperation. Faced with the prospect of a drawn-out invasion that could kill millions, U.S. President Harry Truman made a fateful decision. On August 6, 1945, an American bomber dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. In an instant, tens of thousands were vaporized. 3 days later, a second bomb fell on Nagasaki. And then, at last, Japan surrendered. On September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, the war in the Pacific came to an end. But the scars it left would last forever. The Pacific War had been a conflict of unimaginable scale, fought across thousands of miles, in ocean and jungle, sky and city. It was a war of fire and fury, of bravery and brutality. And when it was over, the world had changed forever. When the guns fell silent in the Pacific, the world exhaled, but it would never be the same. Japan was a nation in ruins, cities reduced to rubble, industry shattered, millions displaced. The glow of atomic fire still hung over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, haunting reminders of the price of total war. For the first time in its history, Japan had surrendered unconditionally. Its emperor, long believed divine, addressed the nation in a trembling voice. "The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage," he said, "a quiet end to a storm of unimaginable violence." In the months that followed, American occupation forces arrived not as conquerors, but as architects of transformation. Led by General Douglas MacArthur, they dismantled Japan's military, rewrote its constitution, and laid the foundation for a new democratic state. But rebuilding was more than political. Millions of Japanese families mourned lost sons, fathers, and brothers. A generation of Americans returned home with memories of jungle warfare, kamikaze attacks, and comrades left behind. The Pacific War had been as personal as it was global. Its wounds ran deep, on both sides of the ocean. At the same time, the geopolitical landscape had shifted. The United States emerged as the dominant power in the Pacific, its influence stretching across former Japanese territories. Bases were built, alliances formed, and a new rivalry was born, not with Japan, but with the Soviet Union. The Cold War had begun before the ashes of the last war had cooled. In Asia, the power vacuum left by Japan's defeat sparked new conflicts. Civil war in China, decolonization struggles in Indochina and Indonesia, and the eventual eruption of war in Korea. The end of World War II was not the end of violence, but the beginning of a different kind. Yet, in the decades that followed, something remarkable happened. Japan, once a militarist empire, became a symbol of peace, technology, and economic power. Its cities were rebuilt, its society reshaped. From devastation, it rose, different but not defeated. And across the Pacific, the memories of war lived on, in cemeteries on tiny islands, in rusting shipwrecks beneath the sea, in black and white photographs, folded letters, and whispered stories passed down through generations. The Pacific War was more than battles and bombs. It was the collision of empires, the clash of ideologies, and the endurance of the human spirit in the face of absolute destruction. It was a war that drowned the ocean in blood. And from that blood, a new world was born. Thanks for watching Warfare Codex. If you enjoyed this journey into history's strangest figures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more amazing stories. See you in the next one.